America, America.
Hello and welcome to International Women's Day 2021. My name is Frank Satterwhite. I'm so proud and honored to host this. I am founder and cybersecurity principal for 1600 Cyber, which is a cyber consultancy based in Europe, and 1600 Avenue, which is a 501c3 based in Silicon Valley in Los Angeles. A little bit about me. I went to UC Berkeley. I was born in California. I went on to George Mason to get my master's in cybersecurity. I have many certifications. I teach certifications. I'm a partner with Osaka. For many, many years, I had the highest security level, and I was an external consultant for NATO, the US military, and now I'm doing private sector cyber consulting. The mission of 1600 Cyber is to take the hard skills I've built, as well as consultants that work with me and for me, and to deliver those to businesses and the organizations that need them. 1600 Avenue, on the other hand, is more focused on diversity and inclusion, inspiring young minds, the next generation to pursue STEM-related careers. Show them what's possible in STEM-related careers. And having said that, obviously that includes diversity and inclusion. And today, we are choosing to challenge tech for that very reason. The people that we have involved are so amazing. They are 100% aligned with choosing to challenge tech, and they're very passionate. So some of the people we have, that you're in for a real treat. We have Nancy Wang. She is the CEO and founder of AWIT. She is also, though, the general manager for Amazon Web Services Data Protection Services. We have Sarah Armstrong-Smith. She's the Chief Security Advisor for Microsoft UK. We have France, and she is the COO for SAP. We have Patricia Jameson. She's the Director of Overseas Diversity and Equity Programs at UMGC Europe. We have Nicole Campbell. She's the Executive Director for ePayment Partners, GmbH, in Frankfurt, Germany. We have Marlies de Villers. She is the founder and CEO of Marlies de Villers Besson Consulting. She's also a member of the Board of Advisors for the Cyber Resilience Center in the Southeast United Kingdom. Finally, we have a music icon with us today, Gordon Commissioner Williams. It's so fitting that he's with us today because he's a partner of mine, but also Lauryn Hill's album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, was just certified diamond. To put that in perspective, Michael Jackson was certified diamond. Gordon won a Grammy for his work on this album, and really excited to see his perspective on diversity and inclusion and how music can help amplify the benefits of tech. Finally, the last thing I want to talk to before we start, the primary initiative for our nonprofit this year is going to be PRIV. PRIV, the community, is a community that empowers people to protect their privacy and secure their lives online. So with PRIV, we've got educational materials, videos, trainings, guides, checklists, but we also have tech tools and tech tips. Things that keep people safe from hackers, but also keep their digital identity safe. So everyone that attends today will get a free membership. Our goal is to make sure that people are able to protect all the things that are important to them. And today, all the things that are important to us are digital and they're online and they're at risk. So that is one of our main initiatives for 1600 Avenue. Without further ado, can't wait for you all to talk to Sarah Armstrong-Smith. She is one of the most unique people I've talked to, and she's in cyber. She leads crisis management. She's a colleague. So to hear her perspective, I've really learned some things during our conversation. I'm sure you will enjoy it. And just want to officially say welcome to International Women's Day 2021. we have Sarah Armstrong-Smith, Chief Security Advisor with Microsoft. She's based out of the UK. She's a colleague of mine, but more importantly, we share a passion to increase diversity and inclusion in tech. So without further ado, Sarah, tell us in your words what diversity means.
Thank you, Frank, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. I think when we look back even over the last year, just what's happened with the global pandemic, it's really brought to the forefront just how important people are and how dependent we all are from technology, particularly when we're working remotely with our employees or consumers or whatever the case may be. And that interconnectedness is so important in the current environment, and we really have to get behind that. I think talk about diversity. I think is what's important is we're not just talking about needing more women, needing more BAME, we need more LGBT, we need more young, we need the diversity comes from that diversity of thought, the culture, the experiences, the knowledge, and actually, having the younger people's opinion versus the older people's opinion, different cultures, different languages, different experiences, being able to pull on all of that is what is actually really important.
So that perspective and your commitment to helping others and increasing diversity and inclusion in tech, it probably started from the same place a lot of my best quality started from, and that's my mother. Tell me a little bit about the profound effect your mother has had on you and what she's instilled in you that you could share.
What resonated for me was that my mum always encouraged me to be a really strong, independent woman and to have an opinion and to speak my mind. Now, that my opinions have not always gone down too well, I have to say, because I'm quite vocal with my with my opinions.
Is there any other way to be?
Well, sometimes people don't welcome that, do they? But yeah, that's kind of what my mum instilled in me, really. And it's really around challenging the status quo and to always ask why.
Right.
Why are we doing it? Why are we doing this way?
Can I interrupt you for a second? My mother, when I asked why, she used to sometimes tell me, because I said so.
I said so. But isn't it right though, when you think about when you go into like school, then you go into a work environment and someone gives you a process or tells you how to do something, you're like, why? Why are we doing it that way? And they'll say, because that's the way it's always been. And I say, but just because that's the way it's always been doesn't mean it's right. And we're talking about technology, we're talking about innovations, and I think the only way that you progress is to challenge the why.
So Sarah, all that's great, but of course, there is some debate as to whether or not diversity and inclusion increases a business's capabilities, is better for their bottom line. So tell us, I know you feel you're really vocal about the fact that diversity in thought and experience can be a huge asset when addressing major incidents and solving crises. Could you tell us a little bit more about why you feel that way?
Cyber criminals, they're always changing their tactics and techniques. So you always feel like you're always kind of playing on a back foot to a certain extent. So you have to be mindful, you have to be thinking on your feet. And it really, for me, it sounds like a cliche, but that thinking outside of the box is what's really important.
This year has been an amazing year for women achieving. Amy Hess is now the Executive Assistant Director of the Criminal Cyber Response and Services Branch at the FBI. Tanya Erhowitz is the Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Cyber Division. And of course, your countryman or countrywoman, Lindy Cameron, leads the UK's National Cybersecurity Center. All of these positions are traditionally held by men. Recently, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article, and in this article, it talks about these achievements, and Ms. Hess was quoted as saying the following: Over time, what I've seen is that it's helpful for young women and girls in school to see somebody that looks like them in these cybersecurity spots. That's something I've grown to appreciate more and more. So in the past several years, to say and to see that you can achieve this too. I'm no different than any of them. How profound is it for young girls and teens that want to be like you or Amy or Tanya? How important is it they see themselves in leadership positions?
I think it's fantastic, and I love the bit which just says, "I'm a person like you." You know, so we've all have our dreams and aspirations and all of these type of things. And I think when I was younger, I never had the benefit of growing up with social media. You know, you never had the ability to see all these people on LinkedIn. I think what's really brilliant is to actually have positive role models, as you said, but actually to see, you know, whether that's a kind of like from a young girls or young women's perspective, or, you know, man, let's say, you know, to actually see that person doing that role. So actually, when you can see that person, it almost kind of, it helps remove the barriers in terms of, you know, what those, sometimes they're false barriers that we put in front of ourselves, because if you can't envisage it, if you can't see it, it's almost like, well, like, you know, it's like to your point before, it's always just been middle-aged white man. There's a woman, there's a whoever there. I think that is what's really positive. And I think back to, you know, when I was sort of young, you know, really, it was always about putting myself forward and having a belief in myself and my ability. And I never actually started off having a role in cybersecurity. It was something that just morphed. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, if I was honest.
Sarah, tell me something you would say to someone who is a little unsure about their ability to succeed or achieve their goals in tech.
I think part of it is, don't worry if you don't know what it is you want to do. I think there's a lot of pressure on people at school to already know what their career is going to be. They've never been in the workplace before. So I think part of it is, don't worry, you've got plenty of time to learn lots of skills, lots of different things. And, you know, just try it out, see what you like, see, you know, see where you want to do ultimately. But I always think, to me, it's like always be inquisitive. And I sort of say, keep asking the questions. Don't be afraid to ask why.
Sarah, you're very unique. Recently, I read an article that asked you if you had to pick 3 people to change the world, which 3 you would choose. What did you say and why? Because I think it adds value to today's event, and explain what your thinking was.
Yeah, I was actually asked a question once, you know, if I ruled the world, what 3 people would I have being by my side, actually? And I said, actually, these are figurative people because they mean something. And the first one was the fearless girl, because it's like me. She's a bit of a rebel. She's completely fearless about everything. And I think that's just the imagery of that is amazing. The second one I had was David and Goliath, and it was really about David being the underdog, and no one bets on the underdog. and that to me, and I think that was just that real positive, you know, it's like coming from your background and your experience and everything else, so you can stand as tall as Goliath, basically. And the third one was about Robin Hood, and it's about robbing from the rich to give to the poor, and that was like, I don't really condone that, but it was just about giving. That's to the point, is giving back. And there was kind of those 3 figures together. I just felt like running, rather than saying, oh, I'd have this person, you know, a specific person. I think there's so many people that do so many wonderfully amazing things that I couldn't just pick 3 actual people from history. So I thought, actually, what these people or figures stand for is what's important.
Sarah, brilliant, brilliant. Really, thank you for making time to be with us today. And you have truly set the tone for our event. Now, I would like to invite everyone to stay along with us as we get ready to transition into our first major panel. Welcome to International Women's Day 2021. Quite enlightening, really great conversation with Sarah. And she's mentioned a couple of key things, but the theme of it all is there's certain tools and techniques that the people today will talk about, or just certain ways to look at things that should enable people who want to achieve in tech, or people who are trying to further diversity in tech, to kind of help push the needle when you run up against obstacles. And speaking of obstacles, this year, I just want to quickly talk about a couple of women who have not overachieved, but have achieved just some phenomenal things. First, we have Kamala Harris. She's a vice president now for the United States. That is truly an amazing accomplishment. I also would like to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was the first woman to lay in state in the US Capitol. She was a freedom fighter for rights for everyone, not just a particular group. Very well respected. And then the other thing before we go on to our next panel, I would just like to pay a little respect to my first example of a engineer, a female engineer. Her name was Rosalind. We lost her this year to COVID. We lost a lot of engineers to COVID. So, but I wanted to take a second to thank her, her family, for her contributions to diversity and just personally influencing me. Okay, so really excited for our next panel. And this panel, we're going to talk about challenging tech on a social scale. And the key about this panel is we've asked some leaders in different segments of industry. And so we're hoping to give you a really well-rounded perspective on how you can challenge tech on a social scale and how you can further the conversation. So hello, Marlise, Nicole, Patricia, everybody. Great to see you all. And I'm
Hi. Great to be here.
Awesome. Really thankful you were able to come. Could you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, in particular about what perspective you bring when it comes to diversity, inclusivity, and equity? Marlise, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marlise de Villiers. I see Frank and I are color-coded today. I love that. Yeah, it's the green, the olivey color. Good taste, very good taste. Yes. So yes, hi everyone. I'm Marlise, and I'm very passionate about individuals and organizations finding their roar. So for me, this is all about creating individuals or helping individuals find that sort of confidence, that inner confidence, and that courage and that strength to speak up and specifically have difficult conversations. So I look at it in an organizational context. So typically a toxic workplace where you have a bully who's ruining everybody's lives. But really it's about the role of leaders to create safe and inclusive spaces where everybody can thrive.
Awesome. Well, very well said, and I think that's a valuable perspective to have. And Nicole, could you please tell us a little bit about you and why you're so special?
Well, Marlise, I would have loved to have you in my life earlier to help me find my voice and speak up and speak out, but I managed to find it on my own over the years. I'm originally from the West Coast of the US, but I've been living in Germany for 16 years. I have a background in languages and literature, which is often a very female-dominated space. And since coming to Germany, I did a Master's of Business in International Education. That was a little bit different. I was one of 5 women in a class of 31. After that, I was working at an audit firm, also kind of a mixed space, sometimes more male-dominated. Some companies have a better handle on gender diversity. And currently I'm working for a payment company. So not a fintech, more of a classical, one of the largest players in Germany called Pay1. And it's been an interesting journey. I've come across different personal experiences and become part of the company's leadership as well. So now I see it as my role, not only to be a role model for women coming into the company, but also figure out how to foster continuing gender diversity. I'm in a company that is very German. So it's mostly a gender diversity position for us right now, because you really do need to speak German to be able to work at my company successfully. But saying that, we also welcome people from other backgrounds as long as they can speak German.
Well, and one of the reasons I wanted to make sure you were on the call, you have a perspective from the U.S. and Germany, obviously, and the conversation is global. Diversity and inclusivity and equity is a global conversation. So I'm glad you're here. And then Patricia, I have to tell everyone, Patricia is an outstanding athlete. So not only can she lead a program, she can get a triple-double in basketball. So she's amazing.
Wow.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Yeah, I gotta say, my background includes, as Frank mentioned earlier, I'm a military brat. My father was in the Army for over 28 years, and military has been my life since I was born. I was born on a military base, and yeah, military plays a big role in my life. My mother is German, white, so I'm biracial. So as you can imagine, diversity has always been a topic in my life. Speaking of basketball, my passion is diversity, equity, inclusion. My passion is to help people. That's what I see as my purpose in life. And I see a great opportunity for helping people through diversity, equity, inclusion work. That's a great opportunity to create an impact. I know diversity, equity, inclusion matters. I see it, right? I can see when you enhance people's skills, when you troubleshoot. There's a lot you can do. And, speaking of basketball, a few years ago, I moved into my community and I was asked to coach the team, and they were ranking on the bottom 10, like the last 2. And I practiced diversity, equity, and inclusion. And right before COVID, before the season was stopped, they were ranking first. That's applying, what I practice and preach. So I know it works, whether in sport or in the workplace.
Awesome. And that's the thing, like you shouldn't go to the office and turn on diversity and inclusion and equity. It should be something you should incorporate into your lives. So so as you can see, we have some great panelists. Let's get into our first question. So people from all backgrounds rely on Facebook to connect with others. And Facebook says we'll better serve their needs with a more diverse workforce. So Maxine Williams, who heads up the diversity program, noted that the number of female employees globally has gone from 31% to 36%. The number of women in technical roles has now gone up from 15% to 22%. And the number of women in senior leadership roles has now gone up from 23% to 30%. So, but yet the gains in other measures are meager or non-existent when you look at the overall percentage of Black employees that has only grown from 2% to 4%, and Hispanic employees that has only grown from 4% to 5%. And Black employees' representation in technical and leadership roles stayed at a flat 1% and 2%. And respectively, Hispanic employees in technical roles remained at a flat 3%, while in leadership roles, that number declined from 4% to 3%. I'm throwing a lot of stats at you, but the reason I'm doing it is because a lot of organizations use stats as a metric to pat themselves on the back for being more diverse and inclusive or not. So the question is, based on your experience, what is achievable in terms of diversity and inclusion, and what should be our goals? Has Facebook been successful in your eyes? And Marlise, I'll start with you.
I'm just going to say not good enough. No, they've not been successful because it's that sort of classical, you know, it doesn't actually look at intersectionality. It doesn't look at the complexity of this issue. You know, you can't just kind of throw a bunch of numbers at people, which just serves one agenda. And it's that sort of, I always say, this is for me a classic example. I'm being very critical here, but it's a classic example of paying lip service and dealing with the convenient issues, the easy issues, and not being prepared to have the difficult conversations and dealing with the tough challenges.
Right. Well pointed out. And Patricia, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, looking at the numbers, you know, I'd be interested in knowing what is their goal and where did they start, and you know, I guess going back starting in 2014, I mean, Facebook has made progress, right? It's made progress. What I see is definitely room for growth. You know, they need to be very intentional in increasing the percentage of minorities that are in their leadership that work for Facebook. So for sure, I see opportunities for growth that they should work on.
So Nicole, I'm going to ask you this question, but add a twist. Since you are part of leadership in your company, if they gave this report and they have these numbers, how do you tell the other leaders around you that, like Marley said, it's not good enough?
Well, actually, I totally get that. I saw a couple of statistics on our company, and it's like, yeah, you know, we've made good headway on gender diversity, but is anyone even tracking other types of diversity and what sort of contributions that can make to the company? And at the moment right now, I mean, we're not. So at least the first step is knowing what you have. Right. So, you know, you can throw statistics around, but at least you know where you're starting from. I agree with Patricia. What are their goals? You know, we've had this in Germany. There's a quota for the number of women and men. They did 30% men and 30% women minimum in supervisory boards for stock listed companies, and that's a legal quota. But companies like mine have a flexible quota. We're supposed to make a commitment and then go on that. So I think we're at about 27% at my level of leadership. We're 31% women in the leadership. That's great. We've committed to staying at that level because it's in line with everything else. But if you communicate what you're committed to and then show that what are you doing to achieve this and showing that you're improving little by little, then I might give Facebook some slack. If I'm seeing, okay, so this is part of their overall diversity initiatives, what are they still doing well on? And what do they still have to learn a little bit more about? That would be my main focus.
It's a kind of tough love, right? You have to say, great, you acknowledge where you're at and you are making progress, but we have some work to do. And hopefully you all being in leadership positions, I hope people that are attending can say, you know what, I'll help you do that work. So next question I'd like to talk about. So think about diversity and inclusion, but there's also equity, right? Diversity is about representation and inclusion is about feeling welcome. Well, in order to improve equity, we must increase justice and fairness within the procedures and processes of institutions, as well as the distribution of resources. Silicon Valley Bank boasts a program that has a mandatory unconscious bias training and engages employees at all levels, starting with the executive committee and senior leadership. The bank does this so the company leaders comprehend, own, and address the conscious and unconscious biases that prevent everyone from succeeding or being hired. So here's the question. Do you feel when there's a lack of diversity and inclusivity, is it due to systemic processes that are creating the ceilings or sticky surfaces? Is it possible that the majority of a company's leadership unconsciously supports processes that hinder diversity and inclusion? Can better equity programs be a possible solution? And can technology help deliver more effective equity programs? I feel like Patricia's a little, her background kind of is well suited for this question. So we'll start with you. Patricia, your thoughts. I know that's a lot of questions, but What are your thoughts?
Okay, I'll try to answer all your questions. If I miss one, please let me know because my mind is racing and there's so much that I could think of when it comes to this topic. So yes, a lack of diversity and inclusion may be due to systematic processes creating the barriers. It could be in the recruitment and retention. Maybe there's bias, occurring within that. It also may be due to the lack of buy-in and understanding of the value diversity, equity, and inclusion brings in performance. Right? People might also gravitate to people who are like them, think like them, right? That's our comfort zone.
Right.
It can also be possible that a company's leadership unconsciously supports processes that hinder D&I, and therefore diversity education is key, evolving, learning what are barriers, what may I be doing, right? That contributes to the systematic issues. And it's not always a lack of a good equity program that is an issue. The issue could be a lack of understanding how the equity program should be applied and enforced, right? Knowing more about the policy. When should I, speak up? When should I file an EO complaint? Is this applicable to me? And the other part is accountability is very key in all this as well. We can have policies, we can have training, but if we don't hold people accountable, right, then that's a whole different issue. And the question, how can technology help? Technology can help deliver more efficient equity program training by offering means for creating training that's interactive, engaging. That's key. That's something I'm working with right now is, because sure, you might have people that don't appreciate and don't want to sit and listen to someone speak and talk about bias, talk about whatever for an hour or two, right? They want to engage, they want to learn, practice active learning. So I like to try to find ways to engage participants in activities that they can actually apply and learn from at the moment. And for that, technology is key, right? How can we make this happen? So that's a short version of what is going through my mind right now.
We'll have coffee and we're going to talk about an hour about all of that one question, okay?
Could I comment on that really quickly?
Absolutely.
I was going to say, Patricia, I would very much appreciate having some of those tools to be able to channel this conversation within my own company. Because in general, I kind of look left and right and it seems like we're doing an okay job. I don't hear about people not getting a job or a promotion because of their background or that they're not the right gender or something. But I'm sure that unconscious bias definitely plays into this at some points. The conversations people are having or not willing to have or things like that. And I'd be very curious to see what my company would do if we started doing trainings like this within, we're now over 1,500 people in Germany and Austria. So we've gotten to a size that we need to, present the right framework to have these conversations. When we were a smaller company a couple of years ago, 550, 600 people, it was a little bit different, but I think we're getting big enough that we need to do our part to actively shape the diversity and inclusion and equity within the company.
Wow, so we'll all three of us will have coffee and talk about this question. So Marlise, the part of the question I'd like you to comment on. So say someone feels there's, which I think you are uniquely qualified for, say a person feels that there's a sticky surface or there's something about, they don't feel like the resources are accessible to them to achieve. How do they approach that conversation?
So, if you're kind of talking about not necessarily a toxic situation, but you're dealing with sort of a bully or some microaggressions. So you can't, what's really hard about these situations, just to call it out, is you can't always pinpoint like whether it's, I call it an above the line or an below the line behavior. So often, the leaders that are a bit naughty, they sort of toe the line, so they know kind of how to manipulate that behavior to stay safe, to not get in trouble. So already you are dealing with a very, very delicate situation. So say you are the target or you are the person who have the issue. It's very important that you first of all, you've got to establish whether you feel strong enough and whether you have the confidence and the courage to address it directly with the leadership team, with the individual. And so it's you having a difficult conversation, but having that difficult conversation in a way where you are not potentially damaging your career. So it's like, what are you prepared to be fired for kind of conversation, right? So how far would you go?
Marlies, it's like, I guess what I'm saying is the conversation needs to happen. It's a tough conversation, but it needs to be productive.
It needs to be a very productive conversation. However, I just want to say this is not the individual's responsibility. This is the leaders and HR's responsibility to create that safe and inclusive environment where people feel psychologically safe to have the tough conversation. Because you cannot expect the individual to have a conversation if there's a fear culture. And the fear of retribution is so great that, you know, the consequence, if I know that there's a chance that I'm going to lose my job if I have the difficult conversation, why would I have the conversation? So I think it's really important here to call out the role, the moral obligation that the leaders and HR have to create psychological safety in the organization.
Brilliantly said, Marlies, and just to sum up what I think you're just stressing that it's the role of HR, not the employee. HR to make sure there's that safe space for an employee to address something if it happens.
Yeah, I would say the leaders first, though, because I think HR is in a tough spot because HR also has to tick the compliance boxes and they have to protect the company. So I think I would put the responsibility on the leaders first and foremost, with HR as the custodians of culture.
Okay, awesome. And let's go into our next question. Recently, McKinsey & Company published Diversity Wins. It was the third in a series of reports. It gave a robust business case about diversity and how outperformance of your financial goals can be likely. And so McKinsey's Diversity Matter report was on 366 companies. It found that racially and ethically diverse companies outperform industry norms by 35%. These findings are underpinned by their largest data set to date, which encompasses 15 countries and more than 1,000 companies. So the overall sentiment was that diversity was 52% positive and 31% negative sentiment on inclusion. Was markedly worse at only 29% positive and 61%. So I guess what I'm trying to say is these executives and these companies in the interviews, what they showed is that people were more positive about the diversity aspect than the inclusivity aspect. So next question is, when you're hiring diverse talent, is that enough? Because if they have the experience that the workplace doesn't make them feel welcome, will they thrive, right? Or will they even stay? So the question is, can diversity cause tension and toxicity in the workplace culture? And how can the individual and how can the company navigate these tensions and help be part of the solution? Marlies, we'll start with you.
So I want to come back, you know what, I want to come back to what Sarah said earlier about her definition of diversity was really, it's about diversity of thought. So if you just if we can just be colorblind for a moment, it shouldn't really matter what, you look like. But of course, we know that we look at unconscious bias and we tend to employ people who look like us, who behave like us, who think like us, right? So it's really, again, addressing those unconscious biases of what kind of stands in the way of you actually really seeing what you should be seeing and asking the right questions. So of course, I think the short answer to that was yes, because it's not about the diversity as much as it is about making everyone feel welcome and making everybody feel like they belong and making everybody feel like they're seen and they're heard and they've got a voice.
Right.
And it comes back to my earlier point around the culture that you're creating as an organization. So it's really important to think about that.
And that culture that you create as an organization, there can be kind of a checklist for that, right? Literally, I think if you were creating a culture for an organization and you wanted people to feel included, there's some key things people can do, right, to make people feel included. Patricia, what are some things you think that if you have that checklist that you would put on it, or just about the overall question in general?
Well, actually, yeah, I'd love to, if you don't mind, answer the whole question, because actually
Sure.
This topic right here is something I'm spending a lot of time on. I've been doing a lot of research and studying and interventions related to this particular topic. So yes, diversity can contribute to tensions and a toxic workplace. Thinking in German and English, here we go, that's starting to hit me now. And impact performance. Thank you. So yeah, if tensions exist, it will definitely impact performance in some shape or form. Based upon my experience, differences impacting the teams include the communication style, whether someone is more expressive, introverted, contained. Preferences, I notice sometimes, causes tensions, different preferences, and then expecting one to adhere to one's own preference, right, or standard way of doing things. Generational differences can make a difference as well. Standards, preferences on space and time. So those are all factors that I've experienced can, contribute to conflict in a toxic workplace. And also being in my communication, I call it the big C. Usually there's something going on with communication that can be improved that's contributing to the toxic workplace. So, we have to admit it can be challenging because there's a lot going on in that shared space between the person giving the message and receiving, and that could be stress.
Absolutely.
That could be how we interpret, body language, etc. And also it can, impact how we receive the message, whether we see it as positive intent or negative intent, because sometimes intent and impact are also not always aligned. And that can contribute to an EO complaint. It can contribute to a toxic workplace. Trust plays a key. So yes, a company can help mitigate these issues by creating opportunities for employees to first get to know each other. I know sometimes it's important that they get to their seat, they learn their job, do their work, but we got to create those opportunities for them to get to know each other. That also needs to be a priority. Establish trust, build cross-cultural understanding, know about their differences so they don't make assumptions, and recognize the different preferences, applying the platinum rule, treat others how they want to be treated, and build on common ground. And a company can be a part of the solution by offering those team building opportunities aimed at accomplishing those factors I just mentioned and holding people accountable for their actions. We can give people as much training as we want, but if we don't hold them accountable,
it doesn't, right? Absolutely. No, absolutely. And something, Nicole, I want you to comment on that Patricia said was really interesting. People make mistakes. Every time someone says something, it wasn't meant to be something that was harmful or to be something that was inappropriate. I'm not saying people shouldn't be held accountable, but like if you get to know someone and if someone says something, you've known them for a while and they say something and it's not really appropriate, there's got to be a space to talk to that person before you go straight to file a complaint or it becomes this bigger issue, I think. Do you agree with that or you disagree with what I just said, Nicole?
No, I totally agree with that, but it requires a couple of the steps that Patricia talked about. If there's no trust, then why would you go back and tell someone, hey, what you said really hurt me, or did you mean this? Because this is what I heard you say. So there has to be an established level of trust first. And the whole idea of intention, if you, like you said, if you know the person, you should be able to understand their intention.
Right.
But sometimes in a stressful situation, you misinterpret that. I have things like that in my team often, and they're Germans sitting together, although we also have a Dutch guy. So I don't know, there's definitely different communication styles. Having having like salespeople working with operations people, they're kind of different mindsets. You've hired them for different skills. They have different communication styles. A big part of that is just always saying, we have an open feedback culture, ask if I can give you feedback. Don't just come around and say, hey, what you said, that really sucked. Speaking off the cuff, being able to trust that you can give someone feedback without them taking offense on it, and that they'll be willing to listen to it and actually have an interest in the working relationship you have together to want to change their behavior. That's another thing. If you don't, just having a feedback culture means, my door's always open, you can tell me whatever you think. That's not helpful if you also aren't mutually invested in saying, yes, and we want to change this for a positive way of working.
Exactly. And Marlies, did you have an additional comment? I think you were trying to jump in.
I absolutely loved what you said about if they change the behavior, because I often say you'll know a real bully from someone who's just had a bad day and is really sorry about that behavior, between whether they actually change, to actually do something about it. So if you're looking at the definition of bullying, it's repeated, the health harming mistreatment of one or more targets by a perpetrator. So it's really about the behavior is repeated, it's consistent over long periods of time. So when you have the difficult conversation, when you have that trust, when you have that feedback culture, and there's a change in there's a positive change, then you're absolutely in a good space. And I love, Patricia, what you said. You keep talking about this accountability and being held personally responsible. So I often talk about the toxic trio. So it's a bully, and it's a victim, and it's a culture. And I always say the bully cannot bully without a victim and a workplace culture which allows the bullying to happen. And I think that's where you've got to really, and I always say each one of the three have to take personal responsibility for their actions or their inaction, because you've got to take that responsibility. And people don't like it when I say the victims have to take responsibility, but at the end of the day, if that behavior is repeated and you allow, it's very harsh, I know, that behavior to repeat, then at some point you become a volunteer if you don't take back your personal power. So you've got to somehow try and address it, and that's why it's so important to ask for help as well.
Yeah, that's boy, you all just really gave some great answers, and I think people will take a lot. I know I will take a lot out of what you just communicated and taught us on the call. So we have a final thought. Our time is almost up, but in 2 sentences, because we're almost out of time, I would like you to give some advice, 2 or 3 sentences, some advice to that young person that's on their journey to achieving some of the things you have, and they're coming up against obstacles. What would you tell them to make them pull their shoulders back, put their head up high, and be confident they can get to where they want to go? Starting with Nicole.
Well, it's a hard one. I mean, I think never give up sounds so trite, but really, I think find an advocate who can help carry your dreams and your connections, whether it's someone, in your personal life or someone in your professional life, to know that this is a person you can spar with and really get feedback on. If you think, I did something wrong and I'm not moving forward because of these things, someone who knows you and is willing to give you really open feedback. That's always been very helpful in my life, because too many people are too nice. They'll say, oh, you're great, this is that, and they won't give you the feedback that'll actually help you change your behavior, overcome issues. But yeah, that's more than a few sentences. And my second one would be deal with imposter syndrome. If you have, as a woman, as many women, and I know men too, are unsure if they're really good enough to do what they think, they need to just jump over their shadow and try it, because until they've tried it, they won't know.
Yeah, that's great advice, really great advice. And Patricia.
All right, 2 sentences. All right, my advice. All right, my advice to the young teen-year-old would be to choose your battles wisely and avoid taking things personally, and build your toolkit to take along your journey So you're always prepared for the challenges that come your way and don't experience this freeze effect, right? And then regret not speaking up or doing something like that.
Exactly. Thank you, Patricia. And Marlies.
So mine is all related to your 4 superpowers. So I always say to people, you have all the power inside you to achieve and do anything with your life what you desire. So I always have my little framework is about turning your thoughts and your feelings and your words and your actions into your 4 superpowers. So it's taking that personal power, or taking it back, reclaiming it if you feel like you've lost it, but really unleashing that personal power and turning those thoughts, feelings, words, and actions into your 4 superpowers. And that's how you find your roar.
Awesome.
Which is what I'm all about.
Patricia, I think she's not only can inspire young aspiring professionals, but she could give the pep talk for the team before they go win the championship for you. So come talk to your team as well. Listen, this is amazing. Thank you, ladies, for such a profound thoughts. I hope everyone's enjoying this International Women's Day event. We have a lot more coming up. Next up will be a conversation with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Gordon Williams, professionally known as Commissioner Gordon, probably most known for Lauryn Hill's Miseducation, Will Smith's Men in Black, Carlos Santana's Supernatural, Damian Marley, Welcome to Jamrock, and Amy Winehouse's first album, Frank. Don't confuse what's good with what's great, because there's a difference.
Let's talk more about the amazing things that have been accomplished by women all over the world.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have to say good morning.
Oh, good morning. Good afternoon from London.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Good morning from New York.
Okay, perfect. Well, it's a pleasure to have both of you at this session. We thought that it would be a really good moment to bring that conversation about how we bring creative and new ways of bringing the diversity and inclusion conversation into technology. And we couldn't think of a better person than to do it with you, Gordon, and to talk about everything that you've done, that you're doing, and everything that we are doing together, which we have a lot of really exciting plans. So, I'm going to briefly introduce myself first. My name is Maria Isidro de la Cruz. I am Chief Community Officer at 1600 Cyber, which is our elite technical and cybersecurity consultancy. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Spain, but I currently live in London. Before coming to the UK, I've lived in a lot of different places because my original background is in archaeology. I worked as an archaeologist for, I don't know, I was going to say 15 years. So yeah, that's, I think that's for a long time. And because of my career, I managed to live in a lot of different countries and learn from a lot of different cultures, learn many languages. And all that background and that multiculturality really has helped me approaching problems and challenges that I face now that I'm in tech in a very specific and unique way.
Yeah.
So I think that in particular, in my experience, this has been a great addition to in a lot of different situations that I've faced. And also coming from a humanities background, it adds a layer of ethics and understanding the social impact of technology that it has been very, very valuable for me. So that's a bit about me. I just wanted to wrap up by saying that this year, I choose to challenge tech to find new and creative ways to bring diversity, equity, and inclusion to the sector. And I'm really looking forward to having this chat with you and Sophia. And welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. So
go ahead. Sorry.
So my name is Sophia Minka Premo. I am originally from Ghana. I attended the University of British Columbia, where I studied social justice and economics. I am part of the 1600 Avenue team. I am the community outreach and program assistant, as well as the project manager. Because I studied social justice, my role here just fits right into what I've always wanted to do, which I'm very, very happy and passionate about. The fact that we really cannot have, we've reached this point in life where we really cannot have social justice without digital justice. And so this just ties into the reason why I choose to challenge tech, because to be able to achieve the social justice that we need, I feel that we need to fully tap into how much we can use digital justice for good. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Gordon, we've seen a video, but could you do a short introduction about your career? And we're going to go in depth in a little bit, but could you introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure. It's good to put a face with the name, Maria. So yeah, I've met Sophia already online, but now it's good to meet you as well. Just other than the email.
Good to meet you.
Yeah. Well, Gordon Williams, professionally I'm known as Commissioner Gordon on records, and that came from an artist named KRS-One, a rapper named KRS-One, who started calling me that on record, and then it sort of stuck, sort of out of the Batman thing, but also, my name is Gordon. So I'm a producer, engineer, as the video said, probably most known to the world for projects with Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation, Amy Winehouse's first album, Alicia Keys' first record, and a long time relationship with the Marley family, Stephen and Damien, and even some remixes with Bob Marley. My background spans over the course of probably, without dating myself, I hate to use this word because people always want to call you a legend. To me, a legend is somebody that's dead. I'm like, hey, I got a new record coming out. Like, what is this legend talk? But let's just say it's more than 25 years. Okay, let's just say that, being in the industry. And I've been on both sides of it. I've been an artist, I've been a producer, I've been the engineer, I've had a label. So I've been in education quite heavily, as we'll talk more about in the conversation, and most recently appointed a Goodwill ambassador to the island of St. Lucia.
Thank you so much, Gordon.
Yes.
Thanks. So let's get into the conversation.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So you've mentioned Lauryn Hill and the album The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and it just became Diamond.
Yes.
Right? It just became congratulations.
Thank you.
And you won a Grammy for your work on this album, and you have been an ally of diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout your career. And this album is just one instance. So how did your contributions help further diversity and inclusion with artists such as Lauryn Hill? And how have you helped female artists find their voice?
Well, I think diversity included before that became like the catch phrase. I like actually what Sarah was saying early. That's pretty much been my life, that, you know, it's inclusion of all. Diversity just means, to me, just means diversity. You know, when we make a song, you know, you listen to a song and there's a drummer, there's a bass player, there's a keyboard player, there's a guitarist, there's a vocalist, there's a background vocalist. Everybody has to work together to create the end result that the people hear and say, oh, I like this song. You don't necessarily say, I like this song because I like that drum part, or I like that bass part, or I like this keyboard part. You're listening to the whole thing, right? Like a soup. So when we make soup, there's all these other ingredients. Is either at the end, what makes it good, the spicing and the seasoning. So I think for me, diversity has always been something that I looked for from a child, naturally, because I liked working with, you know, multiple people in creativity. And I think, you know, with someone like Lauryn, I just had maybe, you know, it's funny, Frank said earlier that, you know, he's a mama's boy, like raised by his mom. Well, I'm the same. So I think growing up with a strong mother, especially in the neighborhood where I was coming up in the Bronx at the time, you know, I was never intimidated by strong women. You know, I saw after I got on an industry that maybe that's not always the case, you know, with people that you work with. But to me, I just gravitated to that. So I think I've always tried to create a doorway for voices, and it seems like a lot of those voices have just happened to be female voices.
Right. That's incredible. And just to ask, I wanted to ask you another question now that we're talking about music, and I know that Sophia is going to ask you about the banker later. But so we are collaborating, creating that that connection between music and technology, between entertainment and technology.
And technology, yes.
And you have seen firsthand how powerful music is, how it can connect, how it connects people, how it strengthens communities, and how it opens minds, right? How it brings memories. Mm-hmm. And actually last week I watched the Golden Globes, and I heard Jane Fonda's speech, and I think she said something that I wanted to read very, very briefly, because I think it brings you know, I think it would be a good fit for this conversation. She said, because the non-linear, non-cerebral forms that are art speak on a different frequency, and they generate a new energy that can jolt us open and penetrate our defenses, so that we can see and hear what we may have been afraid of seeing and hearing. And she also talked about the importance of storytelling and bringing that diversity of voices and representing those voices that that maybe nowadays don't have a seat at the table, and that needs to be told, right? These conversations need to happen. So my question is, can you tell us 3 ways you plan to use music and technology to bring people together this year, and further diversity and inclusion, especially for women?
Well, actually, that was a really great quote. You know, I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to try to stay the music person, because, you know, part of how I got the name commissioner is that I wore a lot of hats, or a lot of kufis, you know, but I think in this setting, it's probably best for me to answer from a musical standpoint, because I think that's why I'm here. You know, there was some great conversation already, and a lot of the things I'm feeling have already, you know, been said. But in response to your question, technology, as Bob Marley said, he said one good thing about music is when it hits, you feel no pain. right? When you get a hit from music, it doesn't hurt. It actually hits you and it penetrates you, right? So technology is the voice now, is our means for our voices to be carried, right? At one time there was a piece of tape, or there was a vinyl record, a piece of product. Now it's an MP3, it's a file, but it's still the content that needs to get to the end listener. That's the important thing. The technology is the means now of delivery. So one of the things I've been looking at, and I've actually have been looking at it, you know, it was a godsend to meet Frank and you guys and to be able to work with you, because I saw when digital, I did one of the first sessions on a system called Pro Tools, Pro Tools is probably the most well-known digital, what we call a DAW, digital recording workstation, right? And the very first one, at the time when I was at Sony, which was the years of Lauryn Hill, so you're talking about mid 90s, they brought a unit over to Sony Studios for me to demo. You know, at this time now, what we have on a laptop back then was, you know, 3-4 towers and an operator and then 2 computers and a whole thing, you know. But the idea was to come in the studio and not touch anything that we had normally been working in the studio, you know, the big board, the tape machine, anything, no microphone. We were just going to work with this guy, and basically we're going to do everything, you know. And at first, you know, I wasn't skeptical, because I've always been a tech person, you know, starting as a DJ. I've always liked gadgets, you know, so from a kid, I was always into gadgets. But when we actually went through that session and we got to the end, and I really didn't touch anything, I said to myself that at that moment, I said, you know what, everything is going to change. I have to start thinking about this. Even though, yes, it was big and bulky, I knew at a certain point, this is going to be accessible to all of us. Maybe at that point, it's just me or people like me, but it would be accessible to all of us. So, you know, I embraced it right then. So pretty much everything I do is trying to push the tech language with the music. Music is, think of music like it's a catalyst for anything you put it next to. So you see a lot of times people, what do? They market all sorts of products with music. Right. So they're not selling the music, but you want to sell a pair of sneakers, you put music next to the sneakers sell. You put the music next to the car sells. You put the music, you know, whatever the thing may be. Now, to be able to be socially responsible with that power, with a company that is socially responsible in tech, and, you know, put that together, I think it's the most powerful combination, and I'm committed to that.
Right. And also using the music to raise awareness about issues that technology brings.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, because again, like Bob said, when it hits you, you don't feel any pain. So sometimes you can say things in a song that's maybe difficult for me to talk to you about. But the next thing you know, if you're humming it or singing along with it, you don't even realize that it's already changed maybe your feeling about something. And I think that's the real power of music.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I've seen it affect people. You know, I've traveled all over the world since a child, and I've sat in rooms with people that didn't speak my language, and we're all singing a song that I worked on. And that experience is very powerful. It's very moving, actually, to see people relate when they say it's the music, the universal language. It truly is. And I think now tech is the language that we're all going to need to speak. So I'm hoping to be a translator for that in a socially responsible way.
Absolutely.
Yes. So this is very interesting. You mentioned that music is a catalyst for basically anything at all, and
good or bad. Good or bad.
Good or bad. And I saw how much I would say you're a catalyst for Apple TV's movie The Banker.
Yes.
Which was based on a true story of, for anybody who doesn't know, so The Banker is based on a true story of Bernard Garrett and Joe Morris, played by Anthony Mackie. I mean, Captain America, for people who might not know him, and Samuel Jackson. Two black men who went to become bankers and landowners in 1950s and 1960s in the US. And that was a huge thing. That's a huge deal. And so it's no surprise that the film has been nominated for a NAACP award, but it's because it curates the fight for equal rights and inclusivity, yes, the 50s and 90s.
Yes.
So then being involved in this project, how did this project, as well as the fight for equality in 2020, impact the work you're doing to help the next generation?
Great question. You know, this project was, it's funny, it had different, you know, at the beginning when I read the script, this was the first project, because I've been involved in a few movie soundtracks. One of the responsibilities that I had in the years that, when I mentioned before that I was at Sony, during Lauren time, I was A&R. So I also worked on Men in Black, the movie, the soundtrack for that. I worked on Love Jones, The Best Man, and Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson. But in those instances, it was more just providing music for the film. The Banker was the first time I actually worked from soup to nuts, like from a script and an idea and a chance to read it, and now ingesting that and thinking about music and going through the process of seeing the film made. And even making the film was so emotional given the story that the film is about, because all of the actors, whether that was Sam Jackson or Anthony Mackie or Nia Long, who were playing these roles, who are now in that was 2019, but in 2019 dealing with, no matter how big they are, still dealing with some of the same issues that was happening in the film. So it was very surreal, almost like you're living the thing that actually happens to you daily, but you're seeing how it was addressed back then in the 50s, how these people, because it's not a very well-known story. Like, I'd never heard of Bernard Garrett, and I'm sure you hadn't heard of him. No one. So when you read it, when you watch it and you go, this is real, like they really did this back then, it just shows you the power of perseverance, but also how far we still have to go. Like, so in answer to that question, it did, you know, we finished it and it was great. It was almost bittersweet. It almost made me be more committed to saying, okay, so what am I going to do to confront these same issues that we're dealing with? Because even the fact of me working in being the music supervisor on a film that had very few African Americans working on it, technically from the standpoint, I'm working on the music. So I'm behind, I'm not on the camera, I'm working on a film, but I'm on the other side. But on that other side, there's not much inclusion on that other side. As many times I looked around and the only brown person that I would see was me, you know? So it brought it even more it made it more stark that, you know what, sitting in this seat is important because I can create opportunity. It's not just about, it's like, why am I here? It's not just about doing this music. It's also about how do we utilize this platform in this time to see how we can help.
Yeah, I love that you're also looking within and wanted to see how exactly you can also contribute or help when it comes to diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Yes, some of the language, sorry to cutting you, but just real quickly, some of the language, and I hope everybody that's watching this gets a chance to really watch that film, and not even me plugging it, but the fact that the language in this film, I think, is very important for 2021, just to listen and to know that this really took place, you know? So some of the language, I think, deals with a lot of the things that we're dealing with now.
So narrowing it down to more of your personal experiences. So your efforts in diversity, quality, inclusion with the community have certainly been woven through your work, so much so that you were officially named the Goodwill Ambassador of St. Lucia just last year. So do you mind telling us how your current work with the Prime Minister of St. Lucia and with Frank and 1600 Avenue are helping underfunded communities gain access to tools the next generation needs to use to learn in today's digital world?
Man, you guys got some serious questions here. This is beautiful. Well, first of all,
I know.
Yeah, you thought about this call. That's very good. First of all, Frank is a brother from another mother. Let me just start off and say that. So from the door, meeting Frank was just like meeting another brother that had so many. We had common concerns. Even when I said to you about music, being socially responsible with music is something that I've taken very seriously from a child, just like Frank is very serious about social responsibility with technology. So even though we shared, you know, the understanding that it's important that we make this union, it was more like spiritually we almost understood that, because we were already walking on that same path. So I think our minds just caught up with our bodies, or maybe vice versa, our bodies caught up with our minds. You know, the PM and Prime Minister, I call him PM, Prime Minister Alan Chastanet of St. Lucia is very committed to education. You know, part of becoming an ambassador, first of all, I had no idea that something like this was even in my wheelhouse, because I didn't go looking for it. I actually reconnected with St. Lucia again because of my mother. My mother's from St. Lucia, and she has a lot of health issues. She's dealing with Parkinson's and dementia, so I take care of her. So in part of thinking about her condition and her care, I thought, well, you know, maybe I should look at going back to the Caribbean, you know, going back there and seeing maybe if I can find a way to bring her back. And I hadn't been there in St. Lucia in a long time, since a child. I used to go kind of regularly up until right before teenage years, and then that was pretty much it. So in going down there, and it's a small island, and moving around and trying to reconnect with family and thinking about things for my mom, I organically got on the radar of the Prime Minister's office, who told me about, you know, had approached me and said, you know, there was a I don't know what you would call it. I guess you would say it's a program, but they were looking at creating an ambassadorship program for St. Lucians abroad in the diaspora who have, you know, have done considerable things, and seeing how we could reconnect them with St. Lucia to address some of the issues that's going on the island. So the ambassadorship is really less about the Prime Minister's office and more about me and the people of St. Lucia. So about a year after that conversation that we had, that they actually got nominated, and they chose me as one of the ambassadors. So because I touched on earlier my involvement in education, one of the areas that I thought about with the ambassadorship, which is, okay, so the Goodwill Ambassadorship, which is through the culture, the art and culture department of the government. And so I'm directly tied to anything involved in culture, but I'm also open to other areas, you know, which education was one of my passions. So I spoke to him about, you know, how can I get involved in that? I have a curriculum that I'm developing more now with Frank and 1600, well, with all of you, because you guys are part of it. 1600 Avenue, I should say. Can't just big up Frank. It's the community. It's Frank community. Yeah, you are. See, he's laughing. It's the community of Frank, because he always makes sure that he stresses the team. Listen, this guy loves you guys, so I'm just letting you know. He's always talking to me about his team. So this is so it's a week. So our curriculum now is tied with what Frank was doing in STEM, you know, in STEM programs, which again was another natural fit. And we're looking at how we can bring technology responsibly to the Caribbean, because there's a lot of irresponsible stuff going, not just in the Caribbean, it's everywhere. You guys know even better than me. You know, I'm just learning how deep the rabbit hole goes in terms of data and information, and how that information is used non-ethically. You know, should I save this for your part of the convo, Frank?
No. We're running a little bit behind, but you're saying everything that is key, Gordon. Like, first, I appreciate you to be here, brother. And most importantly, as he said, when I connected with Gordon, I basically told him tech is no good if nobody uses it.
Yes.
The people that can get the most out of it, they either don't have access to it, or the tech they have access to, they're not using it in the right way. So immediately, Gordon cares so much about the community. Immediately, what I envisioned was using music to educate people about how tech can be used for good, and raise their awareness about how it's being used for bad. And then as a tech company, to give them the tech they need. And that's what we're doing with the PRIV community. But one last point is, Gordon said earlier about put music by tennis shoes. He says sneakers. I'm from California. He's from New York. Sneakers, and they sell. Put music by anything and it sells. Well, I'm just selling tech for good, and I want music beside it. And Gordon way beyond his musical achievements, it has the spirit to do that. And I have to ask you a question, Gordon, and then we have to get to our next panel.
Okay, you know I get long-winded. I'm sorry, Frank. I'm passionate about this.
No, you're perfect. No, you're perfect. We appreciate you. So today, you have accomplished pretty much anything someone in music can accomplish. But today, tell me a little bit about what you're doing with your new album, with Green Tea. But more importantly, tell me a little bit about what we talked about in terms of making it possible for kids in poor communities to learn, because that's our next big initiative.
Yeah, well, let's focus there. I'll give you guys a plug on all the music, but I think here it's more important what you just brought up about the youth in St. Lucia. That's actually where I was going next, that we're looking at, one of the big problems now is distance learning. Initially when we were going into St. Lucia, we were thinking about building a physical facility, which COVID now has sort of knocked everything offline and online, oddly, because some things are offline and there's a lot of things online, like education. And some of the challenges we face is that equipment, number one, because all of the youth need tablets now, and when you're in poorer areas, it's difficult to get the equipment. And then even when you get the equipment, one of the issues you have is connectivity, internet connectivity. So some of those are two of the areas that we've been looking at, and I've been talking with Frank about how we can address, how we can raise awareness to raise some funding to bring some tablets to the community in St. Lucia specifically, but I'm also looking at the Caribbean as a whole. First step is St. Lucia, but it's the Caribbean as a whole, because the same issues we face here, they face there. It's the same issues in Africa. So being socially responsible with the tech, it's not just the equipment. We can provide the programming that would be on the tablets that would also now deal with some of the areas that we're lacking in, and kind of be an assistance to the actual curriculum that's there already. It's almost like we'd be an add-on. So part of it is the technology, but also it's the content. And that's, I think, the power of our relationship, content and tech.
Yeah, we have developed an online cyber and tech curriculum to teach kids about cyber and tech, as well as Gordon has an online audio engineering program to teach kids about the opportunities in engineering from a musical perspective. So, so you'll hear more about that, but tablets, so kids can learn.
Tablets, we're putting a call out, tablets.
Gordon, I want to thank you, man, for joining today. I'm going to call you later.
Okay.
But really appreciate you, and brilliant job, Maria and Sophia. I'm grateful you all are part of our team. And Maria, I guess we'll transition into.
Okay, real quick. Look at Green Tea Peng, Green Tea, P-E-N-G. You can find her on Instagram. She has a single out called Not Ain't the Same. It's on YouTube. She's signed to Universal. That's an album. We're finishing the singles out now. We're just finishing the album. And also look up White Tiger Society. That's a project that I'm part of. That's actually, we're all part. I'm just letting you guys know. You guys are working on this project. So whether Frank told you or not, you're hearing it first. So White Tiger Society, which is based in France. That's our band, as well as new music from Marley's and a few other people. But those two right up front, Green Tea Peng and White Tiger Society.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for having me. And
thank you so much, Gordon.
I'm gonna hang on and keep listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Miss America, America, you are such a beauty queen.
When people are great, they're very humble. And both of them are very humble. Amazing, really talented, really smart, leaders in their industries, but also very humble and very committed to the purpose of today's session, which is not just inspiring people to move the needle on diversity and inclusion, but also kind of giving them some tools to do that. So I think from this session, you'll get, they're going to give you some things that they have done to be successful and to kind of navigate their lives, because when you see someone successful, sometimes you think, oh, they woke up, you know, they went to high school, they went to college, they got out of college, they got the perfect job, it was all easy, and they just got promotions, and they ended up in this position. But it's not true. One thing I think you'll find is they've had some of the same challenges that many people face. So without further ado, Nancy, Anna Marie, welcome. Thank you. Sorry for being running a few minutes late. Tell us, can you introduce yourselves? Anna Marie, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you, Frank, for having me and for hosting such an amazing program. I've had a chance to catch some of it, and gosh, what an amazing lineup of speakers and topics, and so inspirational. I'm really humbled to be here. My name's Anna Marie France. I'm the COO of SAP Labs in California. We have about 4,500 employees of our global population of about over 100,000. I'm responsible for the operations, marketing, employee engagement, and location strategy. I've been in the enterprise software industry for about 20 years across all functions: product management, design, corporate strategy. And prior to that, I even had a stint in logistics and railroad operations. My career path has been nothing if not linear. In my free time, I enjoy traveling, exploring the world with my family, getting a chance to read a good book when I have a moment. And first and foremost of anything, I'm a mom. I have 2 young boys who I am excited to grow up in this world that we have, and I'm happily married. And, you know, really just that's kind of the first and foremost is my family and their health and well-being.
Wow, awesome. And Nancy, could you introduce yourself, please? I know you quite well, but everybody else needs to know you.
Yep, I think that sums it up well, Frank. So super excited to be working with you again for another 1600 Cyber collaboration. So happy International Women's Day, everybody tuning in. My name is Nancy Wang. As Frank mentioned, I'm the general manager for data protection services at Amazon Web Services. So things related to data security, privacy. I lead the product management and engineering teams to build for all of our cloud scale customers. Something I'm super passionate about is advancing women in technology, which is now a global 501c3 nonprofit organization whose IWD 2021 mission is to really promote more women into tech leadership roles. That's why I'm super excited to see all the lineup of women leaders, especially women leaders in technology, and now chatting with Anna Marie, who's a women tech leader. So thank you, and really happy to be here.
And you know, this conversation takes on new importance with the backdrop of everything that's happened in 2020 and leading up to 2021, some good, some bad. So glad to have you both here. Let's go back now, though. Remember the early years after you graduated from Penn, Nancy, and Harvard, Anna Marie, and imagine you applied to the following role in a major tech company in Silicon Valley. I'm going to describe it. The description is, you will dive deep into understanding the unique strengths of our business in order to build amazing products that serve the need of their existing and potential customers. You will provide leadership to define how the UI, UX design system, the information architecture and tools all fit together. You'll build design strategies and fully baked end-to-end wireframes, work alongside your partners in product management, marketing, technology, and compliance to execute and launch into the hands of our customers. You will thrive on having real ownership and getting to launch multiple products that you have played a leading position in producing. So the first part of this question, so you've applied for this job, you're at an interview, and the interviewer told you that your credentials seem to be a fit, but asked you, why do you want to work in product design, and can you handle the challenges of such a demanding position? Anna Marie, what would you say?
So I think, you know, if I look back to my younger self, and this was mentioned, I think, in one of the previous conversations, I would have keyed into his question about, could I handle it? Right. And I think my inner voice would have told me, oh my gosh, can I handle it? This is such a big role that they're describing. And I think, that's just something that along the way in my career, you learn to start to embrace some of those challenges and those opportunities and know that no matter what you set your mind to, that you can go out and get. As it relates to design and why it's so important in technology, I believe it's because design leads technology and it brings together both divergent and convergent views. And it's all about rapid iteration and making sure that you're going out and testing and you're bringing back feedback, and a feedback from a diverse group of functions, people, backgrounds. And so I think this notion of, wow, the opportunity to lead something like that would excite me. And I think as I've, later learned in life, what design really brings is the ability to bring together a lot of disparate backgrounds and pieces. And that's so important as we think of technology today and the role it plays in driving business, driving the economy, and also helping us address some of the challenges that we have globally.
And Nancy, so picture you're in the same position and the little angel pops up on your shoulder and whispers in your, what would you have told your younger self in that situation?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks listening in today would identify with the issue of imposter syndrome, right? And certainly I did when I got my first job in tech, right? I was then consulting for federal agencies out in Washington, D.C. And the first thing that came to my mind was this, big tech company, and now, Google, of course, right, wants to interview me for a product manager job, right? What does that even mean? Does that mean that I'm responsible for the success and as well as failure of the given product? And am I positioned well enough to handle it? Right. And that's when, going back to actually a very pivotal moment between myself and my mentor, is, you are able to accomplish what you set your mind out to. And it's dependent on how well you prepare, as well as the opportunity that's given to you. Right. And that's why actually bringing it back to the focus of the nonprofit organization I started. A lot of us can work very, very hard towards a singular goal for most of their lives. Right. But it's really up to that opportunity or that inflection point that's presented to you that then you get to demonstrate everything that you've worked super hard for. So looking back, absolutely, right. Take that opportunity and demonstrate what you're capable of.
Yeah, I think what you're doing with AWIT is phenomenal and much needed. Anna Marie, before we transition into the next question, what was your biggest mentor and how early on did he, kind of gave it away, how early on did he come into your life and give you that key inflection point?
Sure. So Frank and I were talking a little earlier, and I was fortunate. I've had a dad that was in civil rights his entire life. And I remember him asking me when I was 5, and anything from my childhood happened when I was 5, about, what did I want to be when I grow up? And I said, Dad, I want to be a nurse. And I want to be a nurse because women are nurses and men are doctors. And he turned to me and he said, Anna Marie, you can be whatever you want to be. And I feel really fortunate that I had him in my life to constantly remind me that that was the case. And any time in my life that I questioned that, or I took on a new role that I didn't quite think I could do, I'd call my dad and I'd say, Dad, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I took on this new thing and it's really challenging. And, everyone's saying I can do it. There's such high expectations. And he would tell me, he said, Anna Marie, just think back to everything that you've done in your life. Think back to everything, you can do whatever you want. And just having that person that was constantly behind me, but would also challenge me and create those opportunities, I feel really, really lucky to have had that.
And I think it's important that it may not be a father, but everyone find that type of, whether it's an organization like AWIT or a mentor that can tell you along the way that you can do whatever you set your mind to. Going to continue a second part of the original, back to that, when the interviewer asked you if you could handle the position. Something related is, so in 2020, KPMG Women's Leadership Study, a professional said that professional working women believe it is critical for companies to support a woman's development in her 20s, 80%, and a career advancement in her 30s and 40s, 61%. Do you both believe that? And Nancy, for you, how does AWIT try to help address the lack of opportunity and sponsorship through targeted skills-based training, as well as executive mentorship? And just, definitely let people know how they can join the mission with AWIT. We'll start with Nancy on that question.
Sure thing, Frank. As for many of us, right, this year has been such a transformational year, both good and bad, right? And in terms of what it has enabled AWIT to do with our global focus is actually reach even more of an international audience with our skills-based training. So previously, workshops or programming that we had in person at various tech offices like Google or Amazon or Facebook or startups in the Silicon Valley, we've now been able to host our courses and specialization online, especially at the Coursera platform. So we launched our first specialization focused on the business skills as well as technical skills of product management on Coursera in September, and super excited to see now over 6,000 learners have gone through that specialization since September of last year, right? So it just shows a momentum and also appetite of international learners during this period to up-level and upskill themselves. Right now, we're working on our second specialization that's focused on cloud skills. And if you look at the landscape of economic opportunities, as well as the sector that's growing the most in terms of new jobs, right? It's public cloud, right? Without a doubt. So that's why we want to make sure we empower our members with the right core skill set. So that way, when they're presented with the opportunities, they're able to up-level themselves and grow to that inflection point.
Yeah. Nothing's worse to have people get an opportunity and then not be prepared for it. I mean, I've seen it happen several times, and I think it's great that you're making sure that people are prepared for the opportunities when they get them. And so Anna Marie, do you feel it's critical that companies, support and give women confidence in these earlier stages of their career?
Absolutely. I think, one of the things when I was listening to what you were saying, and many people think this is on the career development side, but I think that notion of mentors, right? And making sure that whether it's a formal mentorship program or as a female or anyone, you seek out mentors that are going to constantly help guide you and challenge you to be your best self. Nancy was talking about this notion of upskilling and public cloud, and where the skills are. We could be singing the same tune. We're actually working a lot on that at SAP as well. We actually have an early talent program where this notion of how do you bring in early talent into an organization and really provide them the opportunity around mentorship, upskilling or skills-based training, as well as that cultural aspect of what does it mean to be a part of SAP. We're really proud of our early talent program because we actually have, tens of thousands of applicants, and we use a completely bias-free way of screening our applicants. It's completely skills-based. And we actually, as a result, without even targeting numbers, have a program that's about 50% female, and 10% from non-traditional backgrounds.
And I'm a quick question. So you're saying with this early talent program, just based on the results from the skills training, you're making selections, and that by itself is diverse. Is that what
exactly? So when you take out the bias, the attempts to take out the bias, right? Of course we do interviews, but we test more on skills and fit. And just without targeting numbers, that's what we've been able to have. And so I kind of bring this in because that mentorship early in people's career. So being able to pull from a diverse talent pool, right? Making sure that you have that diversity,
Right.
and then you bring a cohort in and you foster that mentorship, that skills development, and that career development. And then you form kind of, they have alumni and communities that they're able to constantly reflect with and go to as they're growing in their career as well, whether it's inside or outside of SAP. So this notion is incredibly important.
It's like a built-in support system. This is great.
Absolutely.
Really great. So let's switch gears just a little bit. So we talked about being confident and, having a mentor or organization like AWIT to kind of help give you some support as needed. So there's a quote that says, "Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will." And Nancy, several people have talked about imposter syndrome during our events today. So can you both give aspiring professionals some tools they can use to overcome doubt on their journeys to being great leaders like you? Like, what are some tools they can use that you use? Anna Marie?
So I would say the first thing is embrace your authentic self. I think early in my career, I was trying to fit into some box that I thought I needed to fit into, instead of embracing who I am, whether I think someone else thinks that I should be that or not. And I think, we've talked a lot about mentorship. I think the other thing is really, grit and hard work get you a long way, and any leader in male, female, anything, that's what they've done a lot of. And so anyone that tells you that sort of just put your nose to the ground and make it happen and you're going to have successes and failures along the way, that's a part of the journey, right? And so I think really this notion of just be who you are and embrace it, right? Don't fit into someone else's box. And then if you feel that you're not in an environment or a place where people embrace that, look for something else, right? Don't let others define you, and look for something else. And I've been really fortunate that I have had mentors and managers and people around me that, embrace that. And one final thing I'll say is, have your community of people that will just tell you you're awesome. I was also talking with you, Frank, a little bit. I have a friend from, friends all over the place, but right now a friend from business school. She's an entrepreneur. She's starting a new business. I'm looking at a few things on myself, and I just stepped into a new role. And sometimes I'll just call her. It's like, Karen, I just need you to tell me I'm awesome, right? And she'll say, Anna Marie, I just did this. Tell me it's the right thing. And have those people around you that will reaffirm just your greatness. And don't be afraid to reach out to them, because we all feel that way.
So Nancy, that was great advice, Anna Marie. Nancy, you've achieved so much. So tell us the tools you have used along the way, because I'm sure people think when someone's successful, a lot of times everything just comes easy, but a lot of times you'll find that the people who have achieved the most have worked the hardest and overcome the most. So tell us a little bit about what you do, and also if AWIT provides people some tools as well, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like Anna Marie was very fortunate to have these role models and certainly peer mentors. Super important. Can't speak to how important they are in terms of giving you the confidence, as well as just giving you ideas about where to take your career next. I think what's been really helpful for me, right, just to give you a little bit of my background, I grew up in rural Wisconsin. So working in big tech or even going to East Coast schools was not something that people did, right? You certainly didn't talk about it in the high school cafeteria. Even my guidance counselor didn't really know what PEN was, right, before I applied to it. So really understanding how taking my career from, rural high school in Wisconsin all the way up to East Coast and now to the West Coast was something that I really forged myself. But what's been really helpful in that journey is, similar to Anna Marie, is creating my own personal board of advisors. So if you look at the journey that I've had, there's been just so many amazing individuals, giving a few shout out, of course, like Tatiana Mahmood, who helped me start Advancing Women in Tech, or, Wayne Dussault is a big male ally and proponent at Amazon Web Services. There's just been so many individuals who helped me, brainstorm opportunities, who gave me the confidence of, let's lean forward, right? That's a term that, especially at Amazon, will often use and discuss, right? When someone's ready for that next level or opportunities, do we want to lean forward on this candidate? And this is where having diverse individuals in the room, when having, let's say, someone being discussed for their promotion or being discussed for their performance evaluation is so key, right? Because if there's groupthink and there's a monoculture, then there's not going to be that many opportunities for people of underrepresented backgrounds to succeed. And that's why really the future that we want to strive for, whether it's at Amazon or at all the other companies that AWIT works for, is 50-50 representation, right? Because only with that can you ensure that everyone being discussed has the equal opportunities for success.
Nancy, you just said something, as you usually do, that made me think a little bit more. Would you both feel that people even know groupthink exists in their organization? So the people that are deciding which candidates move further, which candidates get promoted, many times that there's this groupthink culture in those situations. Do you both think that consciously that the leadership knows that's the case or not?
I think we're all becoming more aware of it, right? And I think even sometimes when you think you're aware of it, you may not be fully aware of it, right? And so I think more and more we have to challenge ourselves and each other to really think differently and to make sure that we're looking to make sure that we don't have that group think, right? And I know in my role as an executive, part of my job is really to do that. And I rely on my team and peers and others. I ask them, give me feedback, talk to me about what's going on, right? I think the more, I'm a big feedback person, right? The more that you try to have your pulse to the entire organization or the entire community and you seek out those differences, only then can you really, challenge yourself. Sometimes I think I'm a woman, I'm half Mexican, like I know what diversity is, right? No, I don't, right? Nobody owns diversity, right? Nobody's walked in the shoes of others. And so the more that you can try to have that empathy, right? I choose to challenge tech because I think leadership with empathy is key, right? That empathy of walking in others' shoes is so much, I think, what every leader and every person needs to be able to do.
Nancy, you made me think of that. Do you have a perspective on whether there's a conscious or unconscious level of groupthink, and do people really know that it exists? If so, kind of how do you combat that? But besides getting more people, more diverse groups in the decision-making process, how do you address that?
Certainly. I mean, one, you don't need to rely on my words for it, right? You just, one can just take a look at the stats to see, how few female leaders we have in the C-suite, in the boardroom, in executive level positions, right? And especially in technical disciplines, right? There's not that many of us, right, in the room. And that's why a lot of women who I talk to in similar positions speak of the only effect, right? That's really where it comes from. In terms of, being open-minded, right? So given that the leadership team typically isn't that diverse, this is where having, let's say, workshops or facilitators who introduce new ideas, right, or different ways of thinking to, a not very diverse team really matters, because getting more women and diverse individuals into the room, it takes time, right? It takes years. It's not going to happen overnight. But what can happen in the shorter term is introducing new ideas to the leadership body, and also getting them more open to sponsoring underrepresented individuals into leadership roles.
Right. Very well said. Yeah, that's and that part of the conversation is probably one of the main pillars of International Women's Day, right? Getting these conversations to happen and getting new ideas in to make them happen. So we have one final question. I stole this question, I have to admit, from Anna Marie, so I won't take credit for it, but it's a really brilliant question. Anna Marie, you are a firm believer in using your superpower. What do you mean by this? Does everybody have a superpower? And how do you use that to be a difference maker?
Sure. So it goes back to some of the themes I've talked about before, right? Be your authentic self, know what you're good at, know what you're not, and don't be boxed in. I've learned that my superpower is really about kind of seeing things in different dots and then connecting disparate dots where the sum of the parts is greater than any individual piece. And I think, early on in my career, I didn't see that. And I wanted to fit into the box of, oh, I'm an MBA graduate, I should be able to do X and Y and Z. And, I remember sitting in one of my first jobs in corporate strategy, looking at this like really complex financial model, and, finance was never really my thing, and being like, oh, I should be able to do this. Like, why can't I, I need to be able to like build all the macros and do all the stuff. And, why don't I know this? And it was a really, really difficult time. But I remember that, I got through it. I learned a lot. But what I really figured out is, okay, maybe that's not my super strength, right? Like, don't try to fit into someone else's box. And the thing that I have always been sort of good at is like coming into a situation and seeing a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here and bringing it together and creating a vision, and then getting people to try to kind of let's march to that. Let's try to, bring people together. And, really it's sort of the spirit of better together, right?
Yes.
And I think sometimes that's lonely, right? It's not a deep functional expertise in any one area. And so sometimes I'm like, is that really the case? Like, does that really make sense together? But in the end, I think it's just all about making sure that, again, it comes back to embrace your authentic self. Don't try to be something that you're not. And if you really try to use your superpower, it's really amazing. And you don't listen to all those voices that are like, oh, you should be or whatever, but you really use it. It's amazing the kinds of things that you can achieve.
Anna Marie, just one quick question. So what a lot of people experience, though, is when they try to be their authentic self, they don't fit in, and they're pressured to fit in. Mm-hmm. So what do you do if that happens?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things, right? So I think sometimes it's also listening to some of that fitting in, right? In the sense of be my authentic self, but also recognize I sit in a world where I work with other people. I mean, one of the things about SAP, and I've been at SAP for about 10 years, we sit in a global company that's headquartered in Germany, right? And that has global operations all over. So I've had a great experience working with different cultures and backgrounds my entire career here. And part of it is that sort of recognizing and that empathy of like kind of how you work with others. And so I'm not saying fit in, right? But I'm saying like recognize we're all trying to figure out how we work together. And then I really think this, when you feel that pressure to fit in or do something else, or that you have to fit into a box, fight against it, know that there is a place for you to fit in, and again, go back to those mentors, go back to that community, that board of advisors, that strength, that inner strength that got you there, right? Look at the inspiring people that you may or may not know. I mean, I had written down in my notes today in prepping for this, like, just the recent election that we had in the US, and it's all the problems that we've had, or our struggle with racial injustice is so prominent still, right? And it's so sad. Yet if you look at what just happened, we elected our first female vice president of African descent and Indian descent. We had Amanda Gorman get up and give an address that just stormed the world, that just so inspiring. Like, I want to be her, and so go back to those people that you sort of aspire to, read their story, right? And get that inspiration. And it's not always going to be easy. And that's that's part of the authenticity, but find people around you who will just tell you you're great, and the world is your oyster. You can achieve whatever you set your mind out to.
Yeah, that Amanda Gorman, she was amazing too. Yeah, I really think those are some great points, Anna Marie. Nancy, before you answer this question, tell everyone how they can join AWIT. I meant to ask you that earlier.
Sure. Certainly check out our website, www.advancingwomenintech.org. There's so many different ways to volunteer, join our listserv, potentially, write a blog for us, right? That and you can see our columns on Forbes Women, for example, and various other outlets where we try to give more visibility to the amazing female leaders out there who are doing awesome things.
Awesome. Now you get to piggyback, and she said a lot of great things, but do you have any points to add to that in the words that Anna Marie shared with us, her insight?
Yeah, so I think one theme I'm going to tease out is just the passion, right, and grit. That's so important in terms of being having a superpower, right? Superpower doesn't mean that you're going to be really great at everything, right? In fact, I have not seen one candidate yet, or one leader, right, who's absolutely amazing at everything that he or she does, right? And it's really about, at some point, and I made this inflection point myself earlier this year, which is going from managing a team to managing leaders and now leading leaders, right? Is how do you inspire other leaders who work for you, who are managing their own managers or managing their own teams, to bring their best to work every day, right? And a lot of that goes into being a true player coach and understanding how to develop the best strengths on your team, right? That everyone gets united and starts achieving towards a similar goal.
Wait. You did it again, but I know we need to wrap up, but you just mentioned, so how do you know if you need to manage people to be better leaders versus managing your team? And if you give us a thought on that, then I'll have Anna Marie give us a final thought. We'll wrap up. That's a great point.
Sure. It's actually a inflection point that I see in many women who become leaders and who become executives. So the general manager model at AWS means that the leader is both leading the product as well as engineering teams. And at some point, you have to make that inflection point from going from being a line manager, which is where you manage a team of individual contributors, to growing to manage managers, where your managers each manage a team of individual contributors, to now where I am in my career, where I lead leaders. So each of my leaders has a business unit or business functional area where they own, and then they have their own management structure. So in that organizational structure, and we can go into actually this at length about the push and pull model, is how do you implement mechanisms, right, or checkpoints with each of your leaders to ensure that they're having, right, they're bringing their best self, their most authentic self to work, that they're, borrowing, Amazon language, insisting on the highest standards, right? Because once you have that organizational structure, it's really incumbent on each of the leaders to ensure that they're maintaining the standard or they're maintaining a high bar. So that way the team, the entire team, right, is a strong, cohesive unit.
Amazing. And Anna, hard to top Anna Marie, but please give us final thought and so we can wrap up this webinar.
Absolutely. I agree with everything that Nancy just said. And I think it maybe sort of underlie sort of one other thing. Leadership does not mean that you have to manage people, right? And I think so early in our careers, we tend to think of that. Leadership can be done at any level and any individual. And it's really about how do you bring others along to a vision, and passion plays such a big role in that. And then I'd say sort of on the having the opportunity, what I've learned in my career is that being really passionate about how do you make others better, right? And that coaching aspect, that mentorship aspect, and realizing that my job now is really about making the team or the organization better, right? And I still think of myself as that, hey, I'm just like everyone else, and I've got my kids and I've got my dog and I've got all these other things that are going on, and I'm just trying to get by like everyone else. And I realize it's so important that again, that authenticity, right? That authenticity of your people and of people around you, just seeing you how you are. And then it makes it such that they can aspire to be just like you if they not, if they so desire, right? And so I think our leaders and their authenticity and that empathy is so, so important. And so, again, choose to challenge tech because leadership with empathy is so critical for everything that we're doing. And I really see it as a difference in the world today. If we can just walk in other people's shoes, oh my goodness, things would be so much better.
That solves 90% of the problems in the world if people would walk in someone else's shoes. So I agree 100% with you. I just have to say great deal of gratitude for both of you being part of this discussion. I really have enjoyed it. And I hope that everyone can take from this discussion, you have two highly successful people who have achieved, but also had a lot of challenges. But in the end, they have the passion to further the conversation. And when you're having moments where you're not sure you can do it, or you having a moment where day's a little harder, just be more focused, work harder, and lean on that mentor or your dad or whoever it is to give you the support you need to kind of get through that period of time, okay? But the end result is you can do it. You can do anything you choose to do. And that's the purpose of this call today, this entire event. And if you got that from this conversation, mission accomplished. Okay, Nancy, Anna Marie, thank you. I wish you all a great day, okay? And we'll talk soon again.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome, Nancy. Thank you. And in the end, I'm confident to say that we have had authentic conversations about where our challenges are, where our successes have been. I'm an ally, our organization is an ally. Today, we also launched PRIV, which is a community where we're creating a community of people empowered to protect their privacy and secure their lives online. And that'll be through videos, educational materials, technical tools and apps. We have a phone app called PRIV the app. It's a free membership, so everybody who attended will be able to be a part of this community. We also remember those that we lost during COVID. Me personally, Rosalind passed away. She was the first female engineer that kind of set an example for me. And going forward, 2021 has a lot of hope. Very excited about the opportunities. Expect us to use music to take this message of diversity, inclusivity to the rest of the world. I'm proud to be partnered with Gordon. And I want to thank everyone for attending today. On that note, be safe, and let's leave this call and go inspire others. Thank you for your support, and take care. God bless.